Welcome back to Forward Progress, presented by Fanduel. And today we're going to be taking a look at the 6 long shots we think are worth betting in futures markets right now. I'm Jason Cooper here as your host, alongside Judah Forking at Throw the Damn Ball on Twitter. And let's dive right into things here. We're going to look towards the NFC first. Judah, you're looking at a team that could win the number 1 seed, or who you like to win the number 1 seed at given odds. So tell us who it is and why.
Yeah, it's gonna be the Atlanta Falcons. You can get this on FanDuel at 23-1. I think, shop around, of course. And when we're looking at long shot bets, we're really hunting for upside, right? We're not talking about what's necessarily most likely to happen, but we've got something at the market is pricing. It's extremely unlikely, and I think it's just a little bit more likely than that. And I think the case is like fairly simple, which is the division is very, very weak. The Saints project as probably the worst team in the NFL right now. The Panthers, sure, they have some excitement, but like this is a really, really bad team last year, and is still projected by market to be one of the worst. The Bucks themselves, like solid, but at least relative to kind of the other divisions in football, this projects as one of the weakest. And when you look at the Falcons, I think the case for upside is that Michael Penix is actually there's a case to be made that he can be one of the best quarterbacks in football. Is that what's most likely to happen? Of course not. Do I think that is possible? Absolutely. And the case is we have a very small sample, which works in both directions. Number one, it's like we don't really know how good he is, but we still do have some data on him. And there, like he was probably again, it's a small sample, but he was like the best quarterback in structure. If you gave him time and open receivers by virtually any count, whether you want to use EPA, PFF grade, any stat that's sort of capturing this. And you can see it from numerous different sources. This is true of PFF data, the FTN data. The guy was absolutely elite. And then if you kind of take the other sorts of plays, right, when things are not in structure, Penix had incredible sack avoidance. This was a guy who would be top 5 over the course of the season in his ability to evade sacks. So while he's not doing so much creating on his own and he's not the most mobile of quarterbacks, he can still kind of be a net average player when things break down. Just because of his ability to evade sacks. So he's not creating as much, but he's also not being hurt by those negative plays. And even the interceptions he did throw were actually all kind of drops or some weird plays. All that is to say, like he has some elite traits. And I think that's kind of what you're looking for in an uncertain quarterback. And this is a weak division. The NFC East, the Falcons, the Eagles, and Commanders seem to be teams that are going to be competing. The NFC North is just going to be a dogfight as it always is, and the NFC West does not appear as though it has kind of a dominant team. So I think there's a case that like the Falcons can beat up on their own division. Penix is actually a lot better than we thought. Is the defense great? No, but if Penix turns into this terrific quarterback, I think it's at least more likely than the market is giving credit for.
Yeah, and those things you described about Michael Penix, they're not really like, I don't want to say that they're a surprise because that's exactly the type of player we were expecting out of college, right? Low sack rate, a guy who can perform well within structure. On top of that, the pieces they have surrounding him on offense, they have tons of talent there. And Bijan Robinson, Drake London, even Kyle Pitts, who knows? Like in year 4, it seems to be when tight ends get good. So if this is the year for Kyle Pitts to be good, like this is the point, right? So
that I think is kind of the main thing, which is like it's less about how good Penix is and more so like, okay, well, how often is his offensive line? They got one of the best offensive lines in football. Yeah. Like, how often is it that he's going to be in kind of these in structure plays? And it's like Drake London seems to be a legitimate. He's, I think, one of the most underrated receivers in football. One of those things with receivers is like you always like to say like, oh, this guy's top 10, and then you realize that there are just so many really, really good receivers. But Drake London, I think, should firmly be in that camp. And hey, maybe this is year 11 of the Kyle Pitts breakout. You never know when it's coming.
Oh man, every year it just hurts me in fantasy. But yeah, on top of that as well, you mentioned their defense. They added Jalen Walker, James Pierce. Maybe it wasn't good for the long term, but I think we talked about this a little bit. It's going to be good for them in the short term, adding those 2 edge rushers. They could be good pass rushers right out the gate. It's funny that you mentioned a team from the NFC, and that's the first team that we went with here, and the first pick we went with, Atlanta Falcons to win the number 1 seed 23-1 here, because I'm also looking towards the NFC. Something kind of similar, but I'm going a different route here. I'm going to be looking towards the NFC Championship winner market. And for me, I look at the NFC, like you said, it's pretty wide open, and I'm going to take the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to win the NFC at 13-1 over on FanDuel. I mean, the biggest thing for me with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is it feels like well, it doesn't feel like it. They didn't really lose much this offseason, right? They kind of kept the band back together. Their biggest loss was maybe Liam Cohen as their offensive coordinator. But, I mean, this offense is back, right? They add receiver depth in Emeka Egbuka, which was maybe my most concerning issue with them, with Chris Godwin's availability, Mike Evans getting a little bit older. Keeping that wide receiver depth there is going to be helpful for them. Obviously, they have Jalen McMillan as well. They have a strong offensive line, great running back depth, Bucky Irving and Rashad White. Good QB in Baker Mayfield, of course. Can Josh Gizzard be a good OC for them? Seems like Baker's proven that he doesn't really need an OC to elevate his play. So with the offense, I'm pretty happy with how the Bucs look coming into 2025. On defense now, same thing. They didn't really lose much, and they added Hassan Reddick, so they have a little bit improving pass rushing there. And on top of all that, the NFC South, you mentioned it, weakest division in football, probably the weakest division in football. It gives them, I see them getting a relatively easy path to the 1-2 seed in the NFC. And if they're there, I mean, I really think at 13-1, Tampa Bay Buccaneers to win the NFC, I like that bet. So I'm taking that 13-1. I believe in Baker Mayfield. Let's lock that in. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, Baker believer. No, I think it shares a lot of the same reasoning of just like the division matters a lot. My concern, I guess, is the Bucs last year generated like a ton of offense off screens. They actually had Baker Mayfield had more total EPA on screens than, at least in the last 5 years, than any other season other than 2021 Patrick Mahomes. Like, I don't think that's necessarily so sustainable. And like third OC in as many years, it has some question marks. But yeah, I still do share a lot of that same sentiment of that would be the market I'd be looking to attack if I were betting on the Bucs.
We're high on Baker this year. Before we get into the next four, I just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors over at Fanduel. It might be the offseason, but if you want to bet on the NFL and NFL futures, Fanduel is the place to go for that action. Fanduel has a ton of options on the NFL, including, like you saw there, who's going to win the NFC, who's going to win the AFC, who's going to win the Super Bowl, who's going to be the number one seed. Tons of future bets available on Fanduel, including player props and win totals that you can parlay together only at Fanduel. Just visit fanduel.com/forward progress to download America's #1 sports book. That's fanduel.com/forward progress. All right. Coming up next here, Judah, you got a player prop that you're looking towards in the passing game. So tell us a little bit about that one.
Yeah, JJ McCarthy to throw for 4,000 yards. You can get that on FanDuel 250. Again, always shop around for the best pricing. I think what this comes down to is a question of like the Minnesota quarterback's output under Kevin O'Connell, right? We've seen Kirk Cousins went from, granted he had an Achilles injury, so it's a little bit difficult, but had maybe his best season under O'Connell. And then, Nick Mullins comes in and is just like throwing for 300 yards a game. Sam Darnold has this resurgence, and like maybe, Sam Darnold is finally living up to the hype of his initial draft. I don't think that's what it is. I think it is like Kevin O'Connell is a master schemer and a guy who should be talked about in kind of that upper echelon of offensive minds that generate production. And I think the kind of stat that I use, which is like when a quarterback is kept clean, when he's not disturbed, when there's no either pressure that allows for or that forces a quarterback off his rhythm, or when coverage locks down opposing receivers. On the plays when neither of those things happen, the production from the Minnesota quarterbacks, whether it's Nick Mullins, whether it's Sam Darnold, whether it's Kirk Cousins, all of those guys have been top 10 over the last 3 years, meaning their individual seasons. I think that continues. You look at the supporting cast that they have. It's a terrific offensive line. They've got probably the best receiver in football in Justin Jefferson. Jordan Addison, a terrific number 2. TJ Hawkinson, a great tight end. They are loaded on that with offensive weapons. And I think that JJ McCarthy will step in. He's got familiarity in the offense just from 2 years of practice. Sure, he's coming off an injury, but I think the position as that Minnesota quarterback is so good. And I think the market's pricing in a lot of uncertainty when this is like the most stable or among the most stable quarterback positions, at least as it goes with passing output. And yards is kind of exactly that stat that we're betting on. So JJ McCarthy, 4,000 yards. How the rest of the Viking season turns out, I think is going to be fascinating. But that, I think, is something we can pretty reliably bank on as passing yards from this Minnesota offense.
Yeah, if they've proven us one thing over the past couple of years is trust the Minnesota Vikings, trust Kevin O'Connell on what they want to do at quarterback. Don't question them. They know best. And I hate doing that. I hate appealing to authority, but how many times do they have to prove to us that they know what they're doing and they have a good sense of what's going on there. So yeah, JJ McCarthy plus 250, 4,000 regular season passing yards. Make sure you shop that around. I believe there's some better prices out there. It's plus 250 over on Fanduel. I'm also going to be sticking in the passing props area. And I'm going to go for something a little bit different here. I'm going to go to the market of the most regular season passing yards. And I'm going to scroll my way down and I'm going to click on Matthew Stafford at 18-1 to lead the NFL in passing yards. I mean, what's there left to say that hasn't already been said about Matthew Stafford and this Rams offense? Obviously, it's a very strong offense. Sean McVay, great offensive coordinator. The biggest thing for me, though, is that this team improved over the offseason, not only with Puka Nacua getting healthier, but they also added Devontae Adams for Cooper Kupp, who Cooper Kupp kind of felt like he was on his way out towards the end of the year. Nacua and Adams as a 1-2, I think is up there with Chase and Higgins. It'll give them a run for their money. I really think this offense has the ability to boat race teams. I don't know. I look at the way that this team plays. They're going to be aggressive in this year, I think, and I feel like this is kind of the Rams' last chance at a Super Bowl. We don't know how long Stafford is going to be playing for. I think they're going to be aggressive. I think they're going to be throwing the ball a ton this year. They have the receiving core to do it. They have a great quarterback. So all that is to say, I think Matthew Stafford to lead the league in passing yards at 18-1 preseason. I think that's a great bet.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think a lot of the logic of this is their last best shot is kind of what scares me. Of Stafford's, they just have not let him kind of unleash it, and they've kind of played it safe. His passing output in year one, which was far different than it's been the last 3 years. And he's been dealing with injuries, and I don't think that's really, he's always been dealing with injuries. But yeah, I'm with you on Nacua and Adams being a huge upgrade. And I think we don't talk enough about Puka Nacua. I just said Justin Jefferson's the best receiver in football. I think that's true, but I think Nacua is a 1B. I mean, how many obscene yard per route run seasons are we going to have to see from Nacua before we kind of crown him as one of the best in football? He doesn't have any traits that make him so obviously the best. He's great, I guess, at the catch point. But we don't see those long, deep passes or those Jamar Chase 80-yard touchdowns that we're accustomed to. So maybe it's not as flashy, but I'm with you on that receiving core being up there with Chase and Higgins is the best in the NFL.
I'm telling you right now, the forward progress commenters are going to be going after you for calling Puka Nacua the 1B receiver in the NFL. But hey, honestly, I like Nacua as well. I think he's up there. I don't know. I don't want to say he's underrated because I think he's earned a lot of respect this last year. But I think with a mix of his injury history and his draft, I know it sounds silly, but where he was drafted, I think he's kind of disrespected as a result of those two things. But let's get into our last two bets here. You were looking at another receiver, and we're going to look at the receiving market plus receiver to get 1,250 yards. Which receiver do you like, and at what price?
Yeah, it's George Pickens at 1,250 receiving yards. Again, always make sure to shop around for the best price. But I like your reaction there of just almost disgust. I can sense you're oh, George Pickens is just gonna walk off the field, Antonio Brown style. And that's maybe that's the inspo. Former Steelers receiver, guy who can still play. In all seriousness, I think what this bet is rooted in is Dak Prescott when he's healthy, which is a big if. The Cowboys' offenses through different offensive coordinators, they pass a ton. They generate a ton of yardage, and I think that in particular, Dak Prescott very quietly, even before the injury, took a massive step back in basically every major statistic. He's taken more sacks. His EPA was bad. His accuracy was down. He was scrambling a lot less. By virtually any count, he was pretty bad. But the one thing that did stay consistent, and we've also seen this with quarterbacks in a similar, think about Russell Wilson, who also had the rest of his game fall off, but still is having a lot of success deep. That's the same with Prescott. His deep stuff was still among the best in the NFL. He's still one of the best deep throwers. And that's kind of the area where Pickens, I think, is going to be able to excel. And also with CeeDee Lamb in there operating a lot of the middle of the field, commanding a bunch of double teams. I think we're going to get a lot of single coverage for Pickens, where he has some of the best stats by virtually any statistical category. And that's kind of they might not be good. They might not be an effective offense, but like on volume alone, Pickens just being out there on the field in single coverage, getting a lot of deep passes. And 1250, I think, seems a little bit cheap to me. It's one of those weird things where, like, for offenses, when you're the clear number one receiver, as Pickens was kind of last year in Pittsburgh, you think like, okay, he's going to get a lot of targets. But oftentimes, it's actually when you are like the number two receiver for like with an alpha in CD Lamb, where you actually generate a lot of your production. And I think that the same is going to be true for Pickens. And I think 1250, especially at that price, attached to a really high volume offense with a quarterback that can still throw deep, which is where Pickens is at his best. I think there's some value there.
Yeah, no, for sure. Again, you took the words out of my mouth. The only thing I'm worried about here with George Pickens is Game 5. He's not getting every single target. CeeDee Lamb's getting fed, and he walks off the field in disgust, Antonio Brown style. No, but actually, though, I really like this at plus 500 because we've seen that Dallas Cowboys defense be really aggressive, but also kind of anemic at the same time, where if they're not turning the ball over, they're giving up a ton, which is going to lead the Dallas Cowboys offense to be needing to throw the ball, needing to play with pace, needing to put up points. So to hit 1250 for George Pickens with all those things, I kind of like that. Plus 500 at Fanduel. And of course, as always, like we mentioned, shop around because there are some better prices out there. Last one for me, I saved the best for last. In the last video we released on this channel, I got a little bit of flack because one of my sleeper teams this year is the New York Giants. Yes, the New York Giants, the team that had the second worst record in the NFL. And the way I want to attack them in futures markets heading into the year is, for me, I'm looking at the coach of the year market, and I'm looking on betting Brian Daboll at 30-1 to be the coach of the year. I just feel like, first of all, I talked about this with Flup on this channel. He hits all the main criteria you need for coach of the year. It's to be a team that missed the playoffs, right? And their team, of course, missed the playoffs. One of the worst records last year. I talked about this previously in other videos as well. I think they're a sleeper. They have a very, very, very strong defensive line. If Abdul Carter can come in and be an elite pass rusher like he's projected to be right out the gate, there is a case to be made that this is the best defensive line in football. On top of that, I mentioned it before. Their quarterback play was horrendous last year. Whatever you think of Russell Wilson, he's definitely better than Daniel Jones. And on top of that, if Jackson Dart comes in and plays, we don't know what he could be. There's a wide range of outcomes here for this New York Giants offense. And I love Malik Neighbors as well. I think there is a case to be made for them to be a team that can sneak into the playoffs. And if I truly believe if they can sneak into the playoffs, Brian Daboll at 30-1 is an absolute smash hit. When I look at coach of the year, I like to consider obviously how they did last year, but then again, I also like to consider who's going to get the credit for the success, right? I look at the top of the board, Ben Johnson, Mike Vrabel. Both those guys have elite or supposed to be elite quarterbacks in Caleb Williams and Drake May, right? Mike McDonald maybe is another guy who could get credit, but in terms of team and performing over expectation, I really like the New York Giants as a team that can perform over their expectation. If they can sneak into the playoffs, I think there's a great case to be made for Brian Daboll to be the coach of the year. So I'm taking that at 30-1. I feel like that's just way too high right now.
Yeah, I like it. I think that's also the best way to kind of capture the Giants' upside. And you said it yourself, like there's like Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, Jackson Dart. Like they're not necessarily that good, but it is still certainly an upgrade over what they had last year. And this Giants pass rush could be really sneaky. Abdul Carter, Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau even had a solid year last year. Like replacing Azeez Ojulari with Abdul Carter can go a long way. Second order effects there are real. So yeah. I don't hate it at all.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm curious to hear what the commenters are saying. So if you liked any of the plays we mentioned, let us know in the comment section down below. And if you made it this far in the video, do us a favor, smash that like button. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button as well. Also, while you're in the comment section, there's going to be a little link posted. We're going to be doing a Q&A in 2 weeks. So if you have any questions regarding the NFL and NFL futures, we got your back. We're going to be answering all of them here on the channel. So do us a favor, click that link. Drop us any questions you have on the NFL. And that just about does it for us here today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one.